All right, so now we're going to talk about Salesforce deployment. Maybe. Okay, and so what decisions need to be made? So there are really three interrelated decisions, and you can put them into decision areas or you can put them into questions. So here I've put them into questions for you. And so the first one, as you can see, how much selling effort is needed to cover accounts and prospects adequately so that sales and profit objectives will be achieved. So the key here, how much selling effort? 2, how many salespeople? So how many salespeople are required to provide the desired amount of selling effort? And then lastly, revolves around territories. So how do I divide territories or design them to ensure proper coverage of all of my accounts and so that every salesperson has a reasonably similar opportunity for success? So here's an example. Again, I said there's 3 areas, or you could ask those 3 questions. So that's allocation of selling effort, Salesforce size, territory design. So let's look at each of those. And you can examine the example on this slide a little more on your own. So how do you even begin to determine the allocation of selling effort? So I'm going to give you a high-level overview of these analytical models. If you want more information, the 4th area of content on that content slide was supplemental slides, and that's where you can find detailed information. As far as what I want you to know for the exam or quiz is really what's on this slide. So 1, you have single factor models. So single factor models, as you might guess, are based on a single factor. So you choose one factor and you determine selling effort, or how your selling effort is going to be allocated. Good thing about this, very easy to develop and use. Bad thing, you are ignoring a lot of other factors. So the analytical rigor is very low. Other options. You go somewhere in the middle with a portfolio model. And so the portfolio model is going to be based on account opportunity. So it's going to take into account account opportunity and competitive position. So adding a second factor in there. So these fall in the middle of the analytical rigor and development and use. So I would say if you can't do the decision model that we're getting to, but you don't want something as simplistic as the single factor, then you go for a portfolio model. And if you want to find out more about that, again, just click the hyperlink. Lastly, the decision model. And so this is really going to be the, best option if possible. And so that's going to take into account the optimal number of calls considering sales or profit maximization. So that's important because you're looking at not just how many people should we call on, but like which accounts and which account opportunity to maximize my profits or my sales. Problem with this, because it's the best option, because it has higher analytical rigor, it's going to be more difficult to develop and use. You need someone that has statistics backgrounds. You need someone maybe in marketing research. So those are those models, and all I want you to know is kind of what's on this slide. So thinking about Salesforce size, there's some key considerations. 1, productivity. So what would that be? Outputs to inputs. Also thinking about how you're adding or continuing your growth. So it's going to be curvilinear. What that means is there's a certain peak where you're going to experience diminishing marginal returns. So it means that you're not going to have a arrow just continuously going up. It's going to look like a rainbow. So at a certain point, more growth does not mean greater profits in terms of productivity. Other things to consider: turnover. Turnover is very costly. You have to anticipate and manage that. And when we talk about, maybe it's Salesforce recruitment and selection, we'll really delve into that a lot deeper. And then overall, your organizational strategy. So we did a whole module on organizational strategy. So what's your market share? What are your selling costs? What's your sales strategy? What are the growth targets? What's your company looking to do? What are their objectives? You've got to take that into consideration when determining what the size of your sales force is going to be. Not just, okay, here's an analytical model. Analytical models are great. But with an analytical model, you also have to use your experience and your people knowledge of what your sales force can and cannot do. So other decisions, this is just really a way to put it, or this is just a diagram to put it another way. What's your total sales force? And then are you going to have a specialized sales force? So if you remember back to sales channels. So determining, are we going to have like different sales channels? And if so, what's going to be the size of each specialized sales force? And then determining down into that territory area. So how do you determine sales force size? There's 3 different analytical tools. I don't think as a sales manager that you would directly use these. So I'm not going to go into depth on, I'm actually not. I just want you to know that there's these 3 tools and now analytical tools that can help you determine sales force size, but I'm not going to discuss them. If you click on these hyperlinks, you can go to the supplemental slides and I have more information, but I found in the past that I lose students at this point where I don't want to lose you. I just want you to know that there are analytical tools to help you. Other considerations: turnover. So you want to incorporate turnover. So you want to allow for that when you're hiring. So if you know that your turnover is 20%, which is kind of bad, then you want to make sure you have 120 people so that you account for that 20% when you need 100. Also, outsourcing. Does that make sense for your company? If it's a smaller company, maybe it does. If you just need to ramp up for a short period of time, maybe that does. So that's just another consideration. And so again, here you have the supplemental slides. So that is it for Salesforce organization and sales deployment.